Final date. What if the happiest day of your life was actually your last day? What if the moment everything went perfect was actually the moment everything ended? The story I'm about to tell you will show how deceptive time can be. Are you ready? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. My name is Rebecca Martinez. I'm 29 years old and I live in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a marketing specialist working at a small but creative agency. My life has been perfect for the last few months because I finally found him, Daniel Cooper, 32 years old, architect, Harvard graduate, handsome, intelligent, kind, the man every woman dreams of. And he chose to be with me. We met 3 months ago. We bumped into each other while waiting in line at Starbucks. Cliché but true. He spilled my coffee, apologized, insisted on buying me a new one. Then we started talking. Our first date was wonderful. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant in North End. We talked for hours. It was as if we had known each other for years. We liked the same movies, read the same books, listened to the same music. From that day on, we were always together. We made plans every weekend, walks along the Charles River, museum visits, theater shows. I had never seen Boston so beautiful. Daniel was perfect. He brought flowers, opened doors, kept his word. He met my family. They loved him too. My friends were jealous of me. They said Rebecca finally found her prince. Today is also a special day. Our 3-month anniversary. Daniel is taking me to dinner tonight. He said he prepared a surprise. Maybe he'll propose. I'm very excited. This morning on my way to work, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was happy, really happy. At 29, I had finally found the love of my life. The day at the office passed very slowly. I kept looking at the clock. Daniel would pick me up at 7 p.m. I was thinking about which dress to wear, black or red. At lunch, I met with my best friend Lisa. Lisa told me Daniel was very different. Not in a good way, in a strange way. When I asked what she meant, she said he was too perfect. Real people aren't this perfect. I said it was nonsense, that she might be jealous because I found a good man. Lisa shook her head. She said maybe I was right, but I should be careful. In the afternoon, I tried to finish my work at the office, but couldn't concentrate. The evening was constantly on my mind. I left work at 5. I usually stayed until 6, but I had gotten permission to leave early. I wanted to go home and get ready. At home I showered, did my hair, put on makeup. Finally, I chose the red dress. Daniel loved red. I was ready at 6:45. I couldn't sit still from excitement. I kept checking myself in the mirror. At 7 sharp the door rang. Daniel was standing there with flowers in his hand. Red roses. My favorite. That evening everything was perfect. Daniel took me to top of the hub at Prudential Center, one of Boston's most romantic restaurants. All the lights of the city were beneath our feet. Dinner was wonderful. Daniel was very romantic. He held my hand, looked into my eyes. He told me how much he loved me. When dessert arrived, Daniel stood up. My heart started beating fast. Was this it? Daniel took out a small box from his pocket. Blue velvet box. From Tiffany. He got down on one knee. The restaurant fell silent. Everyone was watching us. Daniel proposed to me. He said he wanted to marry me, wanted to spend his life with me. I started crying. Of course I said yes. Of course I wanted to get married. The ring was perfect. 2-carat diamond. Exactly what I wanted. The restaurant applauded. The waiter brought champagne. Everything was perfect. Daniel took me home. We kissed at the door. He said we would start making plans tomorrow. Marriage, wedding, honeymoon. I couldn't sleep that night. I was so happy. I kept looking at the ring on my hand. I was going to be Mrs. Rebecca Cooper. I woke up early in the morning. Before going to work, I called my mother. I gave her the good news. My mother was very happy. My father also took the phone and congratulated Daniel. At work, I showed everyone the ring. The girls were very surprised. They said it was very beautiful, that I was very lucky. Even Lisa seemed happy. She said maybe she had been wrong, that Daniel had made a very romantic proposal. That day I couldn't do anything at the office. I kept making wedding plans. Which church, which flowers, which music. In the evening Daniel called. He said he wanted to have dinner with my family tomorrow night. He was going to officially ask my father for my hand. I got very excited. Everything was moving very fast, but I was happy. The next day Daniel met with my family. My father, mother, little brother Mike. Everyone loved Daniel. Daniel spoke privately with my father. He officially asked for my hand. My father agreed. He was very pleased with Daniel. The dinner went very well. We talked about wedding plans. Daniel wanted to have the wedding in 6 months. I agreed. From that night on, everything developed very quickly. We went to look at wedding venues. We talked to florists. We researched photographers. Daniel made perfect choices on every subject. As if he had been planning for a long time. He knew everything. But at this point, I started noticing the first strange things. Daniel always knew what I wanted, which flowers I liked, which colors I preferred, which music I listened to. As if he had known me for years. One day, I asked Daniel about this. How did he know me so well? He said he was very attentive, that he observed me. But we had only known each other for 3 months. He couldn't know so many details. 2 weeks later, we went to choose the wedding dress. Daniel wanted to come with me. Wasn't that strange? Men usually don't get involved in these things. At the store, Daniel was very decisive. He told me which dress I should try on, as if he had come and looked before. Finally, we found the perfect dress, princess style, lace trimmed. Daniel liked it a lot. I loved it too. But something strange happened. Daniel was answering the tailor's questions. Height, weight, measurements. He knew before I said anything. When I asked how he knew, he said he guessed, but they were very detailed guesses. That day I felt a bit strange, but I didn't mind. I was happy, engaged, living my dreams. I was also starting to wonder about Daniel's social circle. We never met with his friends. He never talked to family members. When I asked Daniel about his friends, he said he had very few friends. He had lost touch with most of them due to job changes. Where was his family? They lived in California, but they never talked. They preferred to keep their distance. This was a bit sad, but I tried not to judge Daniel. Maybe he had family problems. A month later, I had my bachelorette party. The girls had organized a very fun night. At the party, I drank a lot. I was telling everyone about Daniel. I was explaining how perfect he was. Lisa came up to me. I was a bit drunk, but I remember what she said. She asked me if Daniel was real. Was he a real person? Because he never made mistakes. He never said the wrong thing. He was always perfect. I said she was drunk. Daniel was perfect because he loved me. But Lisa continued. She asked if we ever fought, if we ever had disagreements, if he ever got angry. I thought about it. We really had never fought. We agreed on everything. Daniel had never seemed angry. I said this was a good thing, that we were a compatible couple. But Lisa looked worried. She said it was very strange, that people aren't perfect. That night on my way home, I thought about Lisa's words. Was Daniel really too perfect? But then I pulled myself together. Lisa was jealous. She was uncomfortable because I was happy. There was 1 month left until the wedding. Preparations were continuing at full speed. Daniel was controlling everything, from flowers to music, from food to decoration. But what was strange was this. We never talked about budget. Daniel was spending a lot of money, but never asked for accounting. He paid for everything with a card. When I asked about his job, he had said he worked at an architecture firm, but he never talked about work. He never met with colleagues. One day I got curious. I wanted to visit where Daniel worked. I decided to surprise him. I found the address he gave, but there was no architecture firm at that address. There was an empty building. It was strange. Maybe he gave the wrong address. In the evening, I asked Daniel whether the address was correct. Daniel paused. He seemed surprised. Then he said they had moved. Had he given me the new address? He might have forgotten. He gave me the new address, but it seemed strange again. Why hadn't he mentioned they moved? Another day I needed to use Daniel's phone. Mine had run out of battery. I was going to make an urgent call. I saw strange things on Daniel's phone. There were very few numbers in his contacts. Only my number. A few restaurants, taxi company. There were no family members. There were no friends. It was very strange. I asked Daniel, where was his family? He had said his family lived in California, but there was no number on his phone. He said he didn't talk much with family. They preferred to keep their distance. I asked where his friends were. He said he didn't have many friends left due to job changes. But I was there. I was enough for him. It sounded romantic, but it was still strange. Meanwhile, I was also curious about Daniel's past, his childhood, youth, past relationships. I knew very little about him. When I asked Daniel about his past relationships, he said he hadn't had many long-term relationships. He had been waiting for the right person until he met me. This was very romantic, but it still seemed strange. We were talking about a 32-year-old handsome, successful man. Had he never had a long-term relationship? When I asked about his childhood, he didn't give many details either. He had had an ordinary childhood. There was nothing special to tell. As if he had no past. Only the present existed. There was 1 week left until the wedding. We were making final preparations. I was curious about Daniel's guests. When I wanted to see Daniel's list, there were very few names. 5 to 6 people, he said, were colleagues. I asked if no one from his family was coming. He said they couldn't come. It was very far. They had health problems. This made me very sad. There would be no groom's family at the wedding. But Daniel didn't seem to care. What mattered was our happiness. That week, Daniel's strange behavior increased even more, as if he wanted to control everything. Where I would be at what time, who I would talk to. He wanted to know everything. This became a bit disturbing, but I thought it was due to wedding stress. The wedding day came. I was very excited in the morning. I was finally becoming Mrs. Cooper. Preparations began. Hair, makeup, wedding dress. Everything was perfect. But strangely, Daniel kept calling and checking the situation. How I was getting ready, when I would leave, how the journey would go. He wanted to know every detail. This was a bit strange, but maybe he was very excited. On my way to the church, I was very happy. It was the most beautiful day of my life. Daniel was waiting for me at the church. He looked very handsome in his tuxedo. We were waiting for the ceremony to begin. The music started playing. I started walking to As I walked toward Daniel, I was very happy. It was finally happening. I was getting married. But something happened in the middle of the aisle. Something strange. Suddenly everything stopped. The music stopped. People froze. Daniel froze. I looked around. No one was moving, as if time had stopped. Then I heard a voice, a familiar voice. It was saying my name. It said it was time to wake up, that the dream was ending. And at that moment I understood. Was this a dream? My 3-month relationship, my engagement, my wedding preparations. Was it all a dream? I opened my eyes. I was in a hospital room. White walls, white bed. Machines were connected to me. A doctor was standing next to me. An old man with glasses. The doctor told me I had finally woken up. That I had been in a coma for 3 months. Coma? 3 months. Yes. I had been in a car accident. Severe head trauma. I had been in a coma for 3 months. I asked about Daniel. I asked where Daniel was. The doctor looked sad. He said they didn't know who Daniel was. I had been constantly saying his name while in the coma. But I told him we were engaged, that we were going to get married. The doctor said these were all dreams, fantasies I saw during the coma. I looked at my hand. There was no ring. My finger was empty. Wasn't any of it real? Daniel, engagement, wedding plans. No. But I must have had very beautiful dreams. I had looked very happy in the coma. I started crying. Was my 3-month perfect life a lie? The doctor held my hand. He said my real life was starting now. I would recover. I would live again. But it was so real. I said, crying. He said the brain is a very powerful organ. It can create very real fantasies. That day I stayed in the hospital. I kept thinking about Daniel. It was so real. I remembered his voice, his touch, his smile. The next day my parents came. They were very happy that I woke up. I talked about Daniel. I said I was engaged. My mother looked sad. She said there was no Daniel. I had been lying here for 3 months, but my dream was so detailed. Daniel's face, voice, behavior. How could I have imagined so clearly? The doctors gave me more information about the process I went through in the coma. They said my brain was very active, that I was constantly dreaming. Sometimes I would smile. Sometimes I would cry. The nurses also told me that I constantly said Daniel's name, that I acted as if I was talking to him. Sometimes I would reach out my hand, as if I was holding someone's hand. This was very strange. My dream was so real that it had created effects in my body too. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital. I returned home, but everything was different now. My house was the same, but felt foreign to me, because for 3 months I had imagined a different house. The house where Daniel's things were, where we lived together. I kept looking for Daniel. I remembered the moments I spent with him. It was so real. The first days were very difficult. I had trouble distinguishing between reality and dreams. I heard Daniel's voice. I seemed to see him. I went to a psychologist. I told him about the time I spent in the coma. The psychologist said my brain had created a perfect love story. Maybe I had found what was missing in my life in my dream. But I asked why it was so painful. Because I had lived it as if it were real. It was real for me. During the treatment process, I discovered very interesting things. The characteristics of Daniel in my dream were actually made up of details taken from different people. Daniel's face resembled that of a young doctor I saw in the hospital. His voice was like my neighbor's son's. His behavior was the behavior of someone I knew from university. My brain had combined these pieces to create the perfect man. Also, the details in my dream were very interesting. The places in Boston were real, places I had been. But I had imagined going there with Daniel. I had really eaten at top of the hub, but alone, with friends. My brain had taken this memory and imagined I had experienced it with Daniel. Months passed. I tried to forget Daniel, but it was very difficult. It had felt so real. Sometimes I would see someone on the street and think it was Daniel. Sometimes I would wait for my phone to ring, thinking he would call. My friends were very supportive, especially Lisa. She was very patient, tried to understand the situation. Lisa told me I had never mentioned Daniel before going into the coma. I had never told her about meeting someone like that. This was very strange. So Daniel was purely a product of dreams. He had never existed in real life. But why had I chosen this name, Daniel Cooper? Why had I created such specific details? The psychologist said this was the work of the subconscious. Maybe I had heard this name before, read it somewhere. My brain had kept it hidden. During the treatment process, I discovered other things too. That my life before the accident had actually been very intense. Work stress, family pressure, loneliness. At 29, I was successful, but alone. My last relationship had ended a year ago. My friends were getting married, having children. I was alone. Maybe that's why my brain created a perfect love story. I had found what I needed in my dream. 6 months later, I started returning to work. The first times were very difficult. I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about Daniel. My work colleagues were very understanding. They knew I had been in an accident, that I was in the recovery process. But I hadn't told anyone about the Daniel story. Only Lisa knew. She was also very surprised. She realized how right her suspicions about the person I saw in my dream had been. A year later, I really met someone, Mark. He was a good man. He worked at a marketing company. Mutual friends had introduced us. Mark was like the opposite of Daniel. He wasn't perfect. He had mistakes, flaws. Sometimes he got angry, sometimes he said silly things. But he was real. This was very important that I started having a relationship with Mark. But I kept comparing him to Daniel. Daniel would never upset me, Mark sometimes did. Daniel always said the right thing, Mark sometimes said the wrong things. But Mark was real. He had real feelings, real reactions. This comparison was very unfair. Daniel was perfect because he wasn't real. He was the product of my imagination. He was the perfect man I wanted. Mark was a real person. Real people aren't perfect. They make mistakes, get angry, have flaws. That's when I understood. Lisa was right back then. Daniel was too perfect. Because he wasn't real. Real love comes with flaws. Real people aren't perfect. But this doesn't make them worthless. It makes them valuable. Mark and I have been together for 2 years now. We don't have a perfect relationship. We fight. We have disagreements. Sometimes we hurt each other. But it's real. And that's very valuable. Sometimes I still think about Daniel. Those perfect 3 months. That perfect love. But I don't get sad anymore. Because I understood that real life is more valuable than perfect dreams. Daniel will always remain special to me. My first great love. Even if he wasn't real, he has a place in my heart. But now I'm living real life. With Mark. Not perfect, but real. And that's enough for me. Sometimes people ask, do you regret waking up? Wouldn't it be better to stay in that beautiful dream? No, I don't regret it. Real life can be difficult, but it's worth living. Because it's real. No matter how beautiful dreams are, they remain dreams in the end. Real life starts anew every day. That's my story. My 3-month perfect love was actually a dream I had during my 3-month coma. The happiest days of my life were actually the days I was unconscious. Is reality better or dreams? I don't know. But now I'm living my real life. With Mark. Not perfect, but real. What do you think? Perfect dream or flawed reality? Which would you choose? Share your thoughts in the comments.